All right, welcome back. We are joined now by Noel Fritsch, who is the publisher of the National File, which was the organization that broke the news of the Ashley Biden diary back in October 2020. Noel, welcome to Rising.
Thanks for having me.
And so to catch people up, so just at the end of August, Amy Harris and Robert Kurlander both pled guilty to a conspiracy to basically transport stolen property across state lines. That stolen property, according to prosecutors, is the Ashley Biden diary, which meant that they were authenticating that the diary was in fact real and was in fact hers. They also said publicly that Kurlander is now cooperating in an ongoing investigation, which they said is targeted at a media organization that obtained the diary from them. That media organization is Project Veritas. You had told me in a recent interview that a Project Veritas employee was the original source for you guys. That's how you ended up breaking it. A whistleblower there kind of leaked it. So we want to talk about the substance of the dispute, also the press, the freedom of the press implications, and also the ongoing investigation. So first of all, what is National File? I've seen it described as extreme right. Some people consider that pejorative. Others say it's fine, far right. Is what it is. How would you describe National File?
Yeah, if you want the rule of law and basic common sense these days, they call you far right.
Okay.
We are, what I would say is like sort of an upstart, old school Breitbart that's doing a lot of the work out there in the conservative media space that's not being done anymore, actually kind of post-Trump for the last 4 or 5 years. Doing a lot of investigative work, doing a lot of turning the spotlight onto the Republican Party, which obviously needs some deep cleansing. So that's what we're doing.
Okay.
Well, and Ryan, you actually wrote a story about all of this week at The Intercept, and so you're extremely well-versed with the case. It seems to me that the broader question here of press implications, which people have spoken out of, people on the left and right have spoken out about the FBI raid of Project Veritas as a hugely, hugely serious warning sign for sort of a shot across the bow. But it does seem to me that this comes down to Project Veritas leaking the diary to you, which you've confirmed. You said that is exactly what happened, and it sounds like because they were worried that Project Veritas was not itself going to publish that diary before the election.
Right. So I just want to be careful with terms, and of course this is the stuff that the New York Times and the SDNY and the DOJ want to focus on: how the thing got out, how the diary was obtained. A diary is even maybe the wrong word. Journal is more apt, probably. This is an adult woman, 35, 38, almost 40 years old, writing this thing, and so diary makes it almost cheapens it a little bit, or it makes it less important. So if I can tell the whole story.
By all means.
Okay, so yes, there was what we're terming a whistleblower inside of Veritas that was upset that this diary was not being published. We verified with multiple other sources inside of Veritas that the diary had been confirmed. So to be clear, when we published it October 24 and then October 26 in its entirety of 2020, there were a bunch of naysayers out in the public saying, oh, well, we couldn't confirm the diary. That's all false. And many of the people who were saying that were lying publicly.
One of the ways that Veritas confirmed it, according to, I think, the New York Times at this point, was that they called Ashley Biden and basically said, hey, we have your diary. Would you like to come pick it up? And did you listen to that audio, or was the audio described to you?
I have heard multiple accounts of that audio. That audio does exist. To my understanding, this is a...
you haven't heard it?
I have not heard this audio. There is audio of the phone call that was made between individuals at Project Veritas and Ashley Biden. That was not the initial confirmation, however. Nationalfile.com will be reporting more on the actual federal side verification of the provenance of the diary. They knew about it far before any of the New York Times reporting, which came, 18 months later, March. There's a New York Times article, March 20 of 2022, that very clearly tells us that this diary was confirmed and the provenance is legitimate. And I think everyone knew basically implicitly that 1 year later, November 10, 11 of 2021, when the raids happened at
O'Keefe's apartment was raided.
everyone basically knew. It's like, okay, well, the diary is legit. And so at National File, we obviously we protect our sources. It was incumbent upon us to verify, just as James O'Keefe does. He says, we have a source inside of CNN, or we have a source inside of ABC. Well, we had multiple sources inside of Veritas.
Sure. And what has your interaction been with the FBI, if any, to date?
None. Look, I don't think that there was a crime committed here. In all of the work that we've done, all of the interviews the reporters at National File have conducted, and there's been many, and they've been extensive. I want to be clear. I think it's very obvious that the partisan office up there in the Southern District of New York, Manhattan, I think a lot of times they get kind of labeled almost as this boogeyman. It's important to understand these are federal prosecutors. These are DOJ federal prosecutors, not just some name, SDNY, whatever that means. No. These are federal prosecutors that are acting as essentially a Gestapo for the Democratic National Committee and for the FBI. And that is essentially, at this point now, Biden's personal police force.
Right, so when we talk about whether it was a crime committed, we're talking on the journalistic side, right? Either not either on the publishing or on the obtaining of the materials. And so there's an interesting fine line. So the way that the kind of First Amendment law is now understood is that it is entirely legal and protected constitutionally to obtain stolen materials that are of public concern and to publish those materials. All you have to do is think about Daniel Ellsberg and the Pentagon Papers.
That's right.
Those were stolen materials. It gets dicey if Daniel Ellsberg and a reporter, say from the New York Times or Washington Post, are collectively kind of taking the documents. Now, they would in general still be, believe, entitled to publish those documents, but then they obviously, if they're part of stealing is a crime and you can get punished for stealing. And so the question is going to come down to whether or not these kind of materials, two things, whether the materials were abandoned by Ashley Biden at her friend's house or whether they were stolen, and whether or not Project Veritas had instructed them on whether to go back and get more stolen materials, go commit a crime to help us. That kind of thing can get you to verify.
Right.
That kind of thing can get you in hot water. But Ashley Biden has made various statements about this. At one point, I think she did say, "I left these things behind."
That's right.
And so, if they're in the possession, then if they've been left behind, and the person who lives in the house has taken possession of them, are they then in possession of them? Is that a crime? So, what's your understanding of this scenario that led to Veritas? And let me just underscore the importance of this. If they do get arrested, I think a lot of people on my side would cheer. But then the next time a journalist tries to publish something that the government didn't want published.
Julian Assange, right. And a lot of people
Judith Miller.
On that. Judith Miller, trying to get her source. They would start, it starts to criminalize what is fairly standard journalism. If you set aside kind of the more odious parts of what Project Veritas does, paying for materials, which most mainstream journalists don't do, the deceptive stuff, like that part is not illegal, but it's outside of the kind of norms. But the rest of it, the verification, the obtaining materials, that's kind of within the norms. So what's your understanding of what went down at this house where she was living?
I don't know a lot about how flop houses work and where you go to dry out from drugs. I've been learning about it in the last 2 years with Hunter and Ashley's dirty laundry being paraded for everyone to see. One of the things I've learned is it is, I would say, almost a written rule. It's not an unwritten rule. It is a hard and fast rule that when you're at the dry out and you're in rehab, if your stuff's not nailed down to the floor like it's a bed, and you leave it, it's gone.
Delray Beach rules, yeah.
Okay. I think that's obvious. You don't go to drug rehab and leave your stuff lying around expecting to get it back. So the SDNY's case, DOJ's case, is, to my mind, extremely tenuous. It's interesting to me that there's media outlets out there that are essentially taking that that take as rote, as
Right.
gospel truth.
Credulously, the FBI, right.
It's just unbelievable that a media organization would say, oh, well, whatever they said about how this happened, and there's no evidence to back it up. Verbals, if there's a verbal contract, look, it's way in the weeds. I think it's way in the weeds. It is important for the precedent of the First Amendment. There's no question about that. But obviously they're angling, the New York Times and SDNY are angling for this chilling effect. You wrote about it. The chilling effect is real. Like, look, James O'Keefe didn't even publish the diary, and look at what he's having to suffer through. They're pillorying the guy as a warning to everyone else, and nationalfile.com is the only place that's currently hosting this entire diary. Nationalfile.com has the diary. I would ask The Intercept to publish it in its entirety. Right. While I'm here, The Hill.
I didn't know that was the case.
No one's publishing this thing. No one wants to touch it. And look what they're doing to James. That's why.
Well, Noel, thank you so much for joining us in studio and for breaking down your side of this increasingly high profile and high stakes story.
Thank y'all.
Absolutely. We'll be back with more Rising right after this.